Hey guys, Dr. Morris, injury expert. So tons of injuries this week, per usual at this point. It's week 10. You're probably vying for the playoffs, probably trying to hold where you're at or hopefully grow and get a better record. If you're using this for betting purposes, I appreciate you. I use them for myself. Let's start off with quarterbacks, running backs. In the second half of the video will be wide receivers and tight ends. If you're watching this on Twitter, you can watch the YouTube version if you want the time blocks and stamps, but initially it will only be available on Twitter. So Dak Prescott, potentially significant hamstring injury. He ended up suffering what we call an avulsion fracture, slash partial tear of the tendon, basically coming off of the back of where the hamstring attaches to the back of the hip, which is likely where he did it. These are bad injuries. These are either 6 to 10 weekers. This could easily end his season if it is what they say it is. Still worried about a possible hand fracture from him as well. Patrick Mahomes re-injured his ankle. He suffered a medial ankle injury in week 9, tweaked it again in week 10. He ended up being fine. I don't really have any concerns. He'll be good to go, and you really won't even know he's injured. Trevor Lawrence dealing with a left shoulder injury, probably going to be fine. Not a huge deal. But it bears monitoring since it is a shoulder, and even though it's not his throwing shoulder. Baker Mayfield has been really good. Toe injury, probably turf toe. We don't have specifics, but I'm assuming he's going to play. Just took today off. Lamar Jackson is good to go on Thursday night, which is likely going to be a shootout. A combination of back and knee injuries. The knee could be a re-aggravation of that old PCL. It could be an MCL, a meniscus. We don't really have specifics. All we know is that he's going to be in the shootout on Thursday night. Jordan Love's on a bye. Justin Fields should be available if he's needed with his hammy. He should be back. Jayden Daniels close to 100% with his rib. Aaron Rodgers banged up with a hip and a knee and a hamstring and a bunch of other things, but he's going to just power through. Andy Dalton, a backup this week with thumb injury, and they're in Munich. Will Levis could potentially come back this week from his type 2 AC sprain in his throwing shoulder. He would be roughly around the timeline for when he could return. Derek Carr didn't look the best last week, obviously, and he's still coming back off that oblique strain. All right, let's transition to running backs. So unfortunately, Zach Moss suffered a season-ending neck injury. If I were to guess, it's probably either a severe herniated disc or a nerve that is just so clamped down and angry and in pain that he can't get any relief. Probably did an epidural. They're trying to avoid surgery. They're going to do physical therapy and rest him for 2 months and then reevaluate. Hopefully this is not like a Chris Carson situation where he had to have career-ending neck surgery. Christian McCaffrey potentially returning this week from his Achilles and calf injuries. In my opinion, he's got Achilles tendonitis on top of probably an older partial tear of one of his Achilles tendons. Yes, he had that calf injury as well. I think there's a decent chance we see him in week 10, at week 11 at the latest. But even so, it's probably going to be a committee. We're looking at 10 to maybe 15 touches. And then realistically, we're going to probably see Guerendo and probably see Mason. So this may be a three-headed monster. I just don't think they're going to give crazy volume to McCaffrey in his first game back. That doesn't mean you shouldn't play him. I think you should still play him as at least a flex. But at the same time, we have to temper our expectations for him just because I think they want him to last the season. James Conner popped up with a finger injury today. Not overly concerning, but at least bears monitoring to make sure there's nothing significant. Josh Jacobs on a bye. Tony Pollard looked really good with his foot injury. Should be even better this week. Brian Robinson Jr. practiced today in a limited capacity after missing last week with a hamstring strain. He basically made a comment saying, I'm finally doing things the right way, meaning rehab. Some guys will try to play through these and they just never heal and they just really struggle. So it sounds like he did the right thing and shut it down for a week. Rested, rehabbed, and now hopefully he's going to be healthy for Week 10. We'll have to keep an eye on that. Tank Bigsby banged up with an ankle, but he'll be fine. Jordan Mason back to 100% with his shoulder, but I still have some concerns about him in general. Guerendo, minor leg injury. I didn't see him on the report, so he's fine after the bye. Tyrone Tracy obviously has looked fantastic since that concussion, and he's been good to go. As far as Dameon Pierce, he's dealing with a pretty significant groin injury, so I would be surprised if he plays this week. Obviously, he's more of a second fiddle to Joe Mixon. Edwards, I don't know if he played last week, but he was eligible to return from his, I think it was probably a high ankle sprain. He sounds like he's feeling pretty good. Dobbins bounced back, looked pretty good last week. Vidal has been, kind of irrelevant. So we'll have to see how much work Gus Edwards gets. Jamaal Williams dealing with a groin strain. Zamir White came back and contributed a little bit with his quad. Kamara's banged up with that hand, but no concerns. He's got stupid volume. Bucky Irving's looked pretty good with that toe injury that's going to linger throughout the rest of the season. Etienne should be even better this week with his hammy. Keaton Mitchell could potentially make his debut from his bad ACL tear last year, but we haven't seen any specifics if he's active for tomorrow night's game. Tyjae Spears could potentially finally return from his hamstring strain that he's been bothered with for what feels like a month now. We'll have to keep an eye on him, and they'll probably do a similar workload that they did earlier in the season with him and Pollard. Ray Davis looked really good last week. Hard to rely on him, but the kid's talented. Jonathon Brooks likely making his debut in Munich, which is kind of cool. Not many rookie running backs coming off ACL construction missed the first 9 weeks of the season, but here we are. I think he will be in a full-blown committee within the next 2 weeks and probably take over the backfield in the next month, just depending on the status of Chuba Hubbard in terms of health. As far as Aaron Jones, he's been fine for his hammy for a couple weeks now, so really no worries. And Rachaad White with his foot should be good, and Nick Chubb continuing to ramp up, kind of limiting my expectations on him, but he's on a bye this week, so hopefully he looks even better next week after he gets a little bit of rest and recharge. All right, let's finish strong with wide receivers and tight ends for Week 10. This is the midweek update, recording late on Wednesday night. CeeDee Lamb, AC sprain, probably a type 1, even though they described it more as concerning. It sounds like it's more of a type 1 than a type 2. Maybe type 2 and he's just powering through. I think there's a decent chance he plays this week. He's probably going to catch passes from Cooper Rush. I'll be interesting to see if Trey Lance ends up making any impact on any of these games coming up. Chris Olave with a concussion. His 5th one of his career that I can count. It sounds like he's going to go meet the specialist. I'm assuming he's out this week. Is this a possibility? This is career ending? Yes, it is a possibility. That's something you need to consider. He has a family, and it's the nature of his position. It's not like Tua where you can kind of protect yourself. He needs to run routes, and he's at the mercy of where the balls go and where the quarterback throws it. So A.J. Brown popped up with a knee injury, but he was on the field today, so I'm not overly worried on Wednesday. But his partner in crime, DeVonta Smith, ended up tweaking his hamstring. Realistically, he could miss this week. We'll have to see how this is, if this is a big deal or they're just being smart with him. So Thursday's practice will be really important. Drake London dealing with a hip pointer, which is a bruise to this side of kind of the side of the hip after landing hard in the end zone. Very good chance he plays. I'd be surprised if he doesn't. No impact on his performance. Michael Pittman fractured his, I want to say it was his left, third, and fourth finger, if I remember the photo. Either third or fourth, we don't know. They were buddy taped together, so we can't see. But he'll likely play through this. That back injury is still lingering, it sounds like, as well. Darius Slayton, unlikely to play with his concussion. I'm pretty sure they're going to Germany, so I think they're probably going to have to make that decision sooner than later. Keon Coleman, it sounds like he's all but out this week with a wrist sprain. Obviously, if it was a fracture, they would probably hold him out indefinitely. So the fact that he's able to potentially play is potentially good news sooner than later, but it does not sound like it's going to be this week. Amari Cooper did bounce back today and was at practice. Mecole Hardman suffered a shoulder injury but was able to play through the game, so I'm not overly worried. And then Sterling Shepard actually injured his hip in addition to his old hamstring injury, so we'll have to see how big of a deal that is. Jauan Jennings, they popped up with an exact diagnosis, which is pretty crazy because I rarely hear specifics like this. He has a psoas muscle strain. So this is a very unique muscle that actually starts at the front of the quad, kind of like by the hip, runs through the pelvis, and actually comes up and attaches to the lower spine. It's important for mobility and a bunch of other stuff. So that's likely why he was struggling to get back, because this is such an important muscle. And if one side is tight and the other side is loose, you're going to have a twisting type phenomenon that can tweak the back. So psoas injuries have a tendency to be a pain. So hopefully he's back this week. If he is back, likely to take right over for the Ayuk role. And I think we'll see Debo, who's dealing with a combination of ribs and oblique and probably that wrist too. I expect him to play as well. Mike Evans, I do not expect him to play this week. I just think it's too early. I think he needs another week, maybe two. T. Higgins is pretty much all but out, in my opinion. He suffered that quad strain on the 25th, and he just hasn't really had enough time. I think after week 10, they're going to come back in week 11. He's a nice buy low. I actually did it today. If you can get him, he's super talented when he's there. These are just frustrating injuries that you don't really hear from quickly, but they shouldn't impact him once he's medically cleared. Puka, obviously didn't do a whole lot last week after punching someone, I think, in the helmet, which is really smart, obviously. But hopefully that knee is feeling better after tweaking it a couple weeks ago. Brian Thomas didn't do a whole lot last week, probably feeling a lot better this week with his rib injury. McLaurin has been fine. Gabe Davis has been banged up with that shoulder. Tyler Boyd with that shoulder, not really relevant. Tyler Lockett is on a bye this week along with DK Metcalf. I think DK, comes back strong when he's eligible. And then we will see, Zay Flowers has been incredible. No signs of the ankle injury at all, so really no concerns. Waddle left and came back, so I'm not really worried. We haven't really heard about Tyreek's foot injury recently, so I think we're good there. Josh Downs has been, struggling with groin and toe injuries for the good part of a month, but if I remember correctly, he was not on the injury report today, so I call that progress. They were awful last week, but he was still pretty good, so I think he has a chance to be pretty solid this week. Juju hasn't got back on the field yet with his hammy, not completely surprising because he's a veteran guy, and these usually take longer. Cooper Kupp should be, good. He got a ton of targets last week, secondary to Puka not being there. Deontay's on should have it finally make me relevant. He's dealing with a little bit of a rib injury for Baltimore now. Jayden Reed on a bye. Thielen potentially can make his debut or re-debut in Germany. That would be kind of cool. McConkey looks incredible. No concerns with him with that hip injury from a couple of weeks ago. Unfortunately, the Bengals lost their super talented rookie tight end from his second ACL tear. He retore his graph, I believe it was his right knee, which has 5 to 15% chance. So not super low, but not exactly super high. Just a long journey. Unfortunate, and he'll be back. But 2 times ACL tears are tough. They're just, it's grueling rehab for a year, and then you got to do it all again. It's just like, come on, man. Isaiah Likely out tomorrow night with a hamstring strain, so maybe we see a little bit more Mark Andrews, but maybe a sneaky play tomorrow, even though he's been pretty much awful the past, pretty much the whole season, except for 1 or 2 games. Kyle Pitts popped up with a hammy today, so definitely something to monitor. Njoku is on a bye, but has looked pretty good. Not quite amazing. Noah Fant also on a bye. George Kittle should be healthy. He's had the bye week to get healthier, even though he's got about 5 injuries. Jatavion Sanders looks really good. Taysom Hill could get even more work. Obviously, kind of in that Joker role with Olave out with a concussion. They really only have Kamara, him, and a couple of pretty much no-name receivers after they lost Shaheed as well. But they have a new coaching staff, so we'll have to see how that plays out. Dallas Goedert could potentially return this week with his hamstring, which is great news. We'll see TJ Hawkinson get more acclimated. He did okay last week for his first game back. I think he'll get even better, and realistically, within a couple weeks, he's going to look like his old self, which would be great news for anybody that got him in the draft and was storing him and stashing him for the whole time. If you like this type of content, do me a favor, smash the thumbs up, subscribe, check out some of the other videos on either TikTok or YouTube, and we will see you on Sunday night for the injury wrap-up. Thank you very much. Take care.